Well, hello and welcome again to an installment of Making Your Digital Mark. My name is Lisa Apolinsky, content coach and creator and America's digital content futurist. And I am very excited to have my good friend and mentor, and if I can say, publisher of several of my books, the CEO of Indie Books International, Henry DeVries. Henry, thank you so much for joining and agreeing to speak with me today.
Lisa, I'm so excited to talk about storytelling and giving a tool for the tool chest of trusted advisors. So thank you for inviting me today.
Yes, absolutely. So you and I wrote a book together, Persuade with a Digital Content Story, book award winner, very exciting. And one of the things that I have noticed working with my clients, helping them establish their authority power, is there is a unrecognized need for becoming master storytellers. I wanted to get your take on what authority powers, what people who want to become thought leaders in their space, trusted advisors, can do to not only master storytelling, but understanding why that is so critical as you're establishing that thought leadership.
Well, if I gave the viewers one piece of psychology, one piece of psychological advice, it would be this. Human brains are hardwired for stories. That's who we are. And in the 2008 issue of Scientific American, it talked about why we love a good yarn. And they talked to psychologists and sociologists, anthropologists, and one of the characteristics of humans is we learn by stories. So our brains are programmed for stories. You've heard of the oral tradition. So we process with stories. So it's very important to be a storyteller.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd love to get a little more into maybe the process that people who are looking to establish those thought leadership, that area of genius can do. And I love when you say you can't do authority without the word author. And I think
Yes.
that's so, so true. And that's one area where a lot of clients that I've worked with who are ready to write a book forget that adding stories into your content, like you said, is a great way of teaching and connecting and really developing that relationship and trust that we're looking for.
After ghostwriting, co-authoring, publishing more than 150 business books, I can say this: the world does not need another boring business book.
Yes.
There are a lot of boring business books out there that are just designed to make people think. Well, that's only 1/4 of the job. You also need to make people feel, to move their heartstrings. You need to make people feel noble about the work they do and the work others do. And then you need to make people laugh. So we need to do those things to make our books memorable. And yes, you should be an authority in your field. You can't spell the word authority without author. And you can't be a great author without being a great storyteller.
Yes, for sure. What tips can you give, whether it's an author, a consultant, an agency owner, a business owner who's looking to incorporate storytelling into their thought leadership content? What are some tips you'd be able to give?
Sure. Here's my best piece of advice I tell my authors. I said, let's get out your client list and look at the client list. And the first thing I want you to write down is, what were the measurable successes? What happened that could be measured and talked about? So I have an author who in 2 years went from $0 coming in to $200,000 a year. Okay, what was the story behind that? So I always start with the great result and we work backwards. So another person, they were on the Steve Harvey show 3 times. They landed a serious radio deal. They now are paid $15,000 to speak to audiences. Okay, that's the result. How did we get there? And usually these stories go from mess to success.
Yes.
And I tell them that once you have the success, we work backwards. What was the mess? And don't gloss over the mess. Spend a lot of time on the mess, because to really appreciate the journey, we have to know how bad things were. In that story about the author, I talk about she's at the kitchen table. She's got a stack of bills. She's in a crummy 800 square foot apartment. She used to be in a 4,000 square foot home. She was divorced, and her husband was her employer. So no home, no employer, no client work, no money. So we really kind of paint the picture. Oh, she had a teenage daughter. She's sharing that 800 square foot place with a teenage daughter. You kind of, without going further, we kind of get the picture. This is a low spot. So when she's this success, and it only took 2 minutes to tell the story, how she went from there to this great success, we can appreciate it fuller. So I tell people there's 3 characters in the story. There's the main character, also known as the protagonist in writing. There's the mentor character. That's usually you. You're the person who was their mentor. You were their trusted advisor who took them from bankruptcy to being a millionaire. Okay. What was the advice you gave them to get them there? And then the third thing is we need a nemesis character. Usually in these stories, it's not Darth Vader coming in, or it's not some evil wizard. It can be the recession of 2008, the pandemic of 2020, the 1,000-point stock market crash of 2024, the IRS, Obamacare. All of these can be, it's a nemesis. It's some problem that has to be overcome. And those are what makes a great story. If the story was, oh, the person needed something, they went to you for advice, you told them what to do, they did it, it all worked out. Oh gosh, that's a boring story. Nobody wants to hear that. So we need to give it a little drama. So my second point is study Hollywood films. Hollywood is the emotion picture capital of the world. So they tell stories to elicit emotion. Horror movies is to make you afraid. A rom-comedy is to make you feel warm in the heart. A screwball comedy is to make you laugh. So they're looking, when we say we laughed, we cried, we kissed $15 goodbye. So we spent $15 at a movie to feel an emotion. Same thing with your readers. And also when you're on a webinar or podcast like we're on, you should be telling stories. In your articles, you should be telling stories. Human brains are hardwired for stories.
Yes. One other question I had while you were talking, and this is something that I've seen with a few clients where we're going through those successes, right? It's not necessarily what you do, it's the result you get from working with you, right? It's that result, it's that end point. And sometimes they're like, well, and they try to diminish the results. Well, I only made $200,000 for the year, or I only, help them save 20%. How do you help these authority figures? And I've done this myself, let go of this imposter syndrome where it's like, well, it's not $1 million. It's not, it didn't go viral and got, millions of hits. And there's this idea of these really grandiose numbers that I know I struggle with as well. How do you help people kind of let go of that and still say, a result is a result is a result?
So you've heard of hooked on phonics?
Yes.
I'm hooked on measurable results. I'm hooked on measurable results, and I pull them out of my authors and work with it. And there's a magic word that I use to get them over that imposter syndrome, or, oh, it was little old me, oh shucks, I don't deserve this. The word is help. You helped them do this. So when we'll look at results, one author, I said, well, tell me about a client and their result. And they said, oh, their result was that they doubled revenue. I said, okay, that's a great result. He said, well, I didn't double the revenue. I said, I didn't say you did. Let's back up. What did you do? Oh, I had a program that helped retain salespeople. I said, retain salespeople? Yeah, there's huge turnover in the industry, 80% turnover in 1 year. I said, why does that matter? He said, well, salespeople in this industry don't become profitable until after 6 months. The first 6 months is a write-off. I said, okay, so what retention level, did you achieve? He said, well, we only had a 20% rate of people quitting. I said, versus the industry is 80%. So you were 4 times better than the industry average? And he goes, yeah, I guess. I said, okay, we're going to write this up and we're going to run it by the client. They're going to approve it. I helped XYZ Corporation double revenues in 2023 by instituting a Salesforce retention program that quadrupled industry average, which matters because a salesperson in this industry is not profitable until they've served for more than 6 months. I said, run it by your client. Client approved it. Yeah, that's right. Because he didn't take all the credit, but it was positive on them. And we used percentages, not real dollars. So that's another thing. A lot of people don't want to use real dollars. They don't want to say that they helped increase sales by $1 million. We're privately held. We don't want that out. Or, even if we're public, you and I have worked for public corporations and all. A lot of times, big numbers are reported in the annual report, but we're not breaking them down by division or department or anything like that. We're keeping that close to the vest, like when you play poker or cards. Well, you've played cards with me, to keep your cards close to the vest with me. So they will report percentages. It's like, I went there and my salary increased by 30%. Well, we don't know what your salary was or what it is, but we know a 30% increase sounds pretty good. Now, I did work for one company and where I say we doubled their awareness because we took it from 2 to 4%. Their national awareness, but I got permission to say we took it from 2 to 4%, which was impressive with what we accomplished in the time we did it and with the budget. Yeah, we didn't say we made them a household word or anything. I don't like vague kind of testimonials. The other thing that you can do a testimonial on time. One person gave me a testimonial once that said, Henry helped us accomplish more in 6 months than we did 3 years on our own. Okay, that's time-based. We don't know how much was accomplished, but we know, I did it a lot faster than they were doing it, 6 times faster, if my math's right. So, and it usually is. That's my favorite quote. I said I'm talking with clients, I go, oh, nobody told you math was going to be involved, right? No, we've got to do figures. My mentor, Professor Glenn Broom from San Diego State University, and he's my mentor from grad school to the end of his life, 40 years later. He would often quote Lord Kelvin, the inventor of the Kelvin scale of temperature, like absolute zero.
Yep.
But Lord Kelvin is famous for saying, if what you know cannot be measured, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. If your testimonial cannot be measured, your testimonial is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. And a lot of times I'll interview clients and I'll say, let me write this up and send it to you. And they'll tweak it, they'll edit it, but I get a much better testimonial than if I ask them to do one and wait for them to send me a testimonial one day.
Yes. And I love the fact that part of the process is to take the result and take it back to the client to not only get the approval, but to remind them of what you did to help them. That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
Well, Lisa, I didn't always know this. I've learned it along the way. This first story I told you about, the person who was broke at the kitchen table, her name is Penny Reed, by the way. And um, she just said things to me like, "Oh, it's been great working with you. It's been a great success. Things are going well." So I called her up one day and I said, "Penny, when you say things are going well, what do you mean?" She goes, "I went from nothing to $200,000 a year in 2 years with you." I said, "Would you mind agreeing to put that in writing? I'll be happy to." Uh, so the next thing is, when I told the whole story and I got the story together, I went to one of my investors and I said, "I wanted to tell you a story about what we're doing here." This was early on in indie books. And we just had a first round of investment. So I was like, and I told him the story of how we took this person from 0 to 200,000 in 2 years. And he goes like, "Is that true?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "And that helped get a second round of funding." That story got a second round of funding.
Yep.
I also told him a story about this other person who, and how did I get the story? I had to call him and I said, "Tell me what the results were. What was the success?" Penny gave me permission to tell the story with a caveat because it was another year later. She said, "You have to tell them now it's up to 280,000 a year."
Yep.
And so that's it. You have to go out and get them. You can't wait for them to come in. Now, I have had some come in over the transom, as they say in publishing. I don't know exactly what a transom is, but I think it's something in New York City. Anyway, somebody sent me a letter thanking me and saying the work that we did together, they estimate that it made them an extra $250,000 a year for the last decade. I call that a $2.5 million testimonial. I have other $1 million testimonials.
Yep.
And I go back, I double check, I make sure I have their permission to use their name. Now, certain trusted advisors, because Lisa, you and I write book for financial advisors, and it's the law that we can't put real testimonials on those books or tell real stories. You know, it's kind of that your results, your weight loss may vary, your
Right.
financial success may vary. So we can't put those in due to laws and regulations, but we can tell stories that are based on a true story, and let's call the person Bob, and goes through that. So even though you might be in a field like law, finance, accounting, where it's not ethical for you to tell real testimonial stories, there are ways to get that information in there to have a measurable results testimonial on how you help clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that. No one told me math would be involved.
No one said math.
No one said math.
There's also algebra. That really,
Yeah,
when I
that's
show them the
bad.
revenue formula is A plus B plus 2X equals profits, they kind of like,
Yep. They hide.
but I walk them through it.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Yep. So Henry, if the audience wants to get in touch with you because they're ready to become a trusted advisor and authority power and possibly start a book, how can they do that?
May I tell them the multitude of ways? Because
Absolutely.
our brand is generosity. So the first thing is 7 times a year, I teach a course. It's 3 hours, it's online. If you mention Lisa Apolinsky's name, I will waive the $365 tuition. And that course is the 7 questions you have to answer before a book. Every month, I do a Q&A, a question and answer. I have a guest come on for 10 minutes, and then I answer questions. Devin from my team, who's the expert on production, promotion, answers questions about writing, publishing, promoting books. You can go to my website, indie, books, intl.com, short for international, /events, and it lists when these events are and sign up, free to attend that. If you're really serious about this, you can go to that website, and I offer a free book chat, 45 minutes with me, a non-selling zone, no cost, no selling, no kidding, where I will help you get clarity on the goals for the book, your hidden assets that you have, your roadblocks. Lisa, do I have time for a quick story on that?
Absolutely. Stories are awesome.
A Silicon Valley executive named Mike called 5 of my authors and then called me and said, I've interviewed 5 of your authors. I want to work with you to write my book. And I said, well, that's nice. What did they all say? He said, they all said the same thing. And I said, what's that? They all said you're honest. Well, I was very proud. That's a nice reputation to have. He says, yeah, one of them said, he told you his idea for a book and you said, well, nobody's going to buy that book. So I can be brutally honest, but I do it out of caring. I don't sugarcoat things. I don't blow smoke, but I'll work with you. And I pivoted with those, that author and other ones, to get them something that would get them what they wanted, which was more credibility, more impact, more influence, and more right fit clients, to attract the right fit client, not the client from Hades. We all have those stories, but the right fit client that you enjoy working with. It's a pleasure to take their phone call, and they're a referral source for you.
Love the
See
stories.
how I told a story there?
Yep.
See what I did there?
I saw what you did there. It's
Thanks.
almost like you've written books before and are an expert storyteller. It's shocking.
I know stuff and I drink.
Yay. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Henry, thank you so much for being on. This was amazing. And it's actually given me something to think about, that I need to do the same thing. I need to look at measurable results and go back and have conversations with past clients and just, do that check-in. It's all about relationships and community.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called the Merlin method, because in the King Arthur legends, Merlin was born old and grew young. So it's working backwards. So I always say work backwards from the result, and then do the detective work backwards, to tell a good story, but also to get a good testimonial. Neuropsychologists tell us clients make decisions, prospects make decisions, not based on logic, but based on emotion. And how do we get to the emotional part of the brain? The scientists tell us it's with stress. They go right to the decision-making part of the brain. So all trusted advisors work on the storytelling ability, however you learn to do it, practice it, and you'll be a better authority. You'll have more impact, more influence in your field.
Yes. Could not agree more. Henry, thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. My name is Lisa Apolinsky. And remember, people are hardwired for stories, and your story matters. So make sure you're sharing it, and you're sharing it often.